going to begin with verse 1. John 12, beginning with verse 1. A couple moments to turn there to again, the computer says it's working fine. I'm sure says it's working fine. And I need a 10-year-old to tell me how to make the two of them talk. My kids tell me I shouldn't touch anything that was made after 1972. I'm beginning to agree with them on some of those things. Anyway, John chapter 12, beginning with verse 1, says, Then 6 days after the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany from Lazarus, who had been dead, whom he had raised from the dead. There they made him a supper, and Martha served, but Lazarus was one of those who sat at the table with him. And Mary took a pound of very costly oil, spikenard, anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the oil. But one of the disciples, Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, who would betray him, said, Why was this fragrant oil not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor? This he said not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief, and he had the money box, and he used to take what was put in it. But Jesus said, Let her alone. She has kept this for the day of my burial. For the poor you have with you always, but me you do not always. Not always. Anyway, let's go ahead and get to it. Father, in the coming name of Christ, we just ask that you'll be with us. We look upon your word. We ask that you'll guide us, direct us, in order to be able to take this and apply it to our lives this morning. But we thank you for who you are. We thank you for your love. We thank you for your care. And we thank you that we can come before you. And we ask these things in your name. The Feast of Bethany. As you think about what he's doing, you think about his audience, you think about who's there. I want to think about some things and the motives that people have and the things that they do behind them. As you take a look at the first couple of verses of this passage, who's there? Well, we have Lazarus is there. Lazarus is the one that they're identifying has been raised from the dead. We have Mary and Martha are also there. And they're related to Lazarus and have that relationship with him. But have you ever looked at who Mary was in her life before she met Christ? She wasn't exactly the best person that you'd ever want to meet. She was not always, just a wonderful, upright citizen. You think about her past. Excuse me. She's one that you would not want to associate with a lot of different times. And then as you look at some of the others who are there, there's the disciples who are there. Judas Iscariot is there, the one who was going to betray Christ. And it's interesting, every time they talk about Judas, they mention that very fact. Judas Iscariot, the one that betrayed Christ. It's almost like that they could not quite believe that there would be someone who would do that. Thank you. That he would just go a different direction. But we're going to look at Judas here a little bit and see what his motives are behind it. And of course, Christ is there. And he's the one that's going to receive some things. He's going to be the one giving some things. Christ says this in John. It says, To whom little is forgiven, little is loved. In other words, what he's saying is if you would say something like this, well, I've always been a Christian. I've never had any big sins in my life, never had any, big times whenever I would say, well, that was something horrible, that your love may not be as strong for Christ as someone who says, I want to tell you about my life. I was this horrible person, and I was into, the drugs, the alcohol, and all the things that was going on in the time of Christ or the time of today. And God forgave me for that and brought me out of that. So that person is likely to love God more. And as we look at that, it's not always the case, it's not always true, but that's the background that we have for this. ask you a couple of questions as we look at this. Lazarus was dead, and now he's alive. How much do you think that he loved God? Just stop to think about that for a moment. How much do you think that Jesus Christ was important to Lazarus? Well, he was dead, and now he's walking around. He's enjoying the time with his family, and with all that's going on there. I think that he probably had a lot of love for Christ. I think that Christ was very important to him. That's why I look at this and say, well, he's having a feast, and Lazarus is there. Of course. Why wouldn't he be? Lazarus, as you look at him, he was dead, he's alive. We are in that exact same situation, by the way. Now, the book of Ephesians tells me this, that we were dead in trespasses and sins. That we were dead as far as God was concerned. And as our spirit was dead, we were following the prince and power of this air, which is Satan. And then God came and brought to us new life. And now it says, and you hath he quickened who were dead in trespasses and sins. I like the first part of that verse a whole lot better than the second part. God has made us alive. God has made us alive spiritually. Lazarus is that picture. How important is God to us? Is he important? Is he someone that we would say, I have to give my life to him. I am glad to serve him because of what he has done for us. John puts it this way in 1 John. He says, we love him because he first loved us. And that's the position we should find ourselves in. That we should be looking to God and seeking him because what did God give to us? Well, behind this ruler flag we see the cross. He gave his son for us. He gave his all for us. And he has given to us life. John 10:10. I'm come that they might have life, and they might have it more abundantly. I love that verse. He has come so that our dead soul, that was apart from God, has been made alive, and we now follow Christ. I like, as I look at Lazarus and I see him there, he was dead, he's alive. Of course God's important to him. We were dead spiritually, we're alive. God should be important to us. And then I also like Mary and Martha. Martha is there, and Martha is serving. Now I'm not going to criticize Martha. She's doing what's necessary. If you're having dinner, you invite people to that dinner, somebody needs to put the dinner on the table. Somebody needs to cook it. Somebody needs to do things. And if I invite you to dinner, it's not going to be me, because you're not going to be able to eat it. But the thing of it is somebody has to do it. Was Christ important to Martha? Sure he was. Why else would she be doing what she was doing? Well, we are called to serve also. Not just to sit at the feet of Jesus. Not just to hear his message, but we are called to serve. And we have something to serve to the world. The love of God. I like what he says in Matthew. He says, as you go, or going into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. And then baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to observe all things, whatever he's commanded us. We have a job to do. In the book of Corinthians, he says, you are my ambassadors. And we represent God to the world, and they see him through us. Well, sometimes it's not really glorious what we do, is it? It's not really outstanding what we do. Sometimes we labor in obscurity and nobody knows what we're doing, and that's all right. God does. I remember my Aunt Lee was having a guest over. I don't remember who the guest was. It was apparently somebody important, because she was making this cake. And I remember being there and smelling the cake being made